You, where it's supposedly the day where they're going to be giving out alpha invites, but it hasn't seemed to have happened yet. I keep having to check things. It's also a day when they've done some more class tuning. They've found time to buff Beastmaster Hunters and Fire Mages, but nerf Affliction Warlocks. So I don't know what that's going to do to Coven for those who were able to take a whole army of Affliction Warlocks. Fortunately, we only have one. I don't think we'll notice a massive difference. And just, I probably should start off with, before we get into things. Tomorrow, there won't be a stream because I have an evening, a work evening thing, which basically means I'm actually going to have to rush back from it. I might just catch the very end of the raid. I'm hoping they won't kill Imminently before I get back. I sort of think they will, as people who've been watching me stream these raids. No, I've been after the tier 6 legs. Not tier 6. Behave yourself. I can't even remember where we're up to now. Tier 21 legs. For quite a while. And Imminently, he dropped one pair. The first kill. Someone else got that. And then he hasn't dropped any since. Just none at all. Gone. And I've coined it every time as well. Not a sausage. And I can absolutely guarantee, if I'm not there for it tomorrow, I will guarantee it won't just drop Conqueror tier. It will drop multiple Conqueror tier. Yeah, full. I strongly suspect it's just to rein them in on the old multi-dot damage rather than, you know, judge that there's something fundamentally wrong with them overall. Well, yes, I mean, you get several of these evenings. Yes, indeed, it does pay the bills. Until I win the lottery, until this does. So, but yeah, I have several of these a year. Like usually there's about 4 of these evenings that just wipe out a raid in a year, which isn't too bad. But then there's usually 2 or 3 others where it means getting back last minute. So there's a date in February as well where I would get... This isn't a parents' night, no. Although there will be one of those coming up at some point. Actually, that's the point. I can't remember when that is. So there is going to be another one. No, this is an open evening. So it's when prospective... I mean, it includes parents. But it's when prospective students come along to talk to us about the courses that we've got. Yes, the new layout. So it's a bit of a development, I suppose, on last week with the larger font size. So that's just like, you know, top to bottom thing moved over there. Moved some other things around. I may monkey about with it still again. Boosting a friend in Lost City of Tolvir. Evening Red Wing Wow. But yes, hang on. All right, yeah. So yeah, no alpha yet. No one seems to have it. I don't know what they're doing. I've been looking at them. Warcraft devs have had time to tweet about how experience bonuses work, but not time to send me an invite. I don't know what's happening. I also don't know in exactly what format the invite would be sent, because the last time, like, people are expecting an email, but the last time I got in, when they called it Alpha and Legion, when I was in the second wave, I sort of got an email, but I got an email 2 weeks later, after I was already in it for a couple of weeks. It just appeared on my Battle.net. It was automatically linked to my account. Now, I don't know if the same thing applies. It doesn't make sense for it to arrive by email. In the old days, it used to, because you had a beta key code, and you'd input the code in. But that meant, in theory, you could just give someone else the code, and they could use it. Whereas I think they actually link accounts this time. Yeah, well, Donashi mode. Yeah, Preach going about is expected very soon. I mean, the first I heard of it was at the weekend, where someone was telling me that big streamers were saying it was going to be Tuesday. But I hadn't heard anyone say it. And I couldn't, you know, verify anything. And then yesterday I asked, you know, is it supposed to be Tuesday then? And they said, that's the plan. But of course, they've had lots of plans in Legion. They've had lots of plans in the last year, which haven't always happened. So, I don't know. There are still codes in Dekasasha that people can give out, that they give to people to give out. But that tends to be much later on, and that's, you know, for marketing purposes. Although this first alpha wave of invites will be half for marketing purposes, of course. That's why they invite all the big streamers. They're not inviting them for their valuable inputs. They're inviting them to build hype with the people who watch them. But, so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. All I do know is if I don't get one, this, as in now, I wouldn't necessarily expect to get one anytime soon, because if I don't get one on the basis of, you know, doing stuff for Ret Paladins, hiya Miss Al, then I'm not going to get it on the base. Like last time, I think I got it on the basis what they did. So they sent out the first wave of alpha invites just before Christmas, I think it was. It was before Christmas, I remember. It was two years ago and a month and a bit. And that was, you know, that was largely the big streamers and stuff. Then the second wave went out round about the new year. And that was for raiders who had killed Mythic Archimond at the time. But it wasn't everyone. Because in my guild, for example, most of us were invited, myself included, thankfully. But there were actually some people who weren't included. Who'd done the progress on the boss and killed it. So there was no issue with the fact that they just hadn't done it, but they had. Let's have a look. Anyone else suffering major lag or guild bank auction houses even populating your guild's online listing? And I haven't experienced any lag. Obviously, when 7.3.5 first went out, there were issues. That tended to be FPS issues. I haven't noticed any since it's calmed down. The sound still seems to be iffy, though. I don't think that's really been fixed. Unless it's been fixed today or something. But in terms, I haven't really noticed any lag associated with the patch, personally. This is when the real testing gets done in your opinion. Well, not quite. I don't know when the real test is going to start. Obviously, sending in streamers isn't really doing much for testing. They do that to build the hype. Then they start sending waves in for more testing. Then it depends what they want to test. Like, the thing is, this is why I say it's important to, like, you know, even if I don't get in, I will still be posting feedback where I can. Unfortunately, the only place I can post feedback is on the EU forums. You know, that's the equivalent of writing a letter and then just throwing it into the dustbin. But nonetheless, I'll do it anyway. But that's what people have to do. They have to put that feedback in, even if you're not in the beta. The problem is that what happens when they start opening up the floodgates and they call it beta and they start inviting people en masse, that's when people start going, oh, feedback for this, and reporting issues and stuff like that. And it's like, it's too late then. The reason why they open the floodgates that late on is because they want to stress test the servers. They're not interested in feedback. They're just interested in having lots of people online at once so they can see if the servers can handle it. That's it. Several casuals from your guild got Legion beta. Almost. Well, the beta, you see, can be anyone. I mean, the alpha can be anyone too, because don't get me wrong, when I was in the alpha and you would go into some dungeon groups, some of the people that were in them, there is no way they were Mythic Raiders. Now, bear in mind, there are friends and family that have already been in already, and they, you know, they're already in. They may well have a range of skill levels as well, so you could possibly be coming across some of those. But it's also pretty clear there's some random people invited into alphas as well. Which is good, by the way, I'm not knocking that, because you need people who can't necessarily play it that well to make sure that you're not pitching it too difficult. Because they almost always do. The dungeons, when they're first available, are always too difficult. They're always monstrous. What would it take to get me posting on the North American forums? Well, in theory, yes, I could just pay for a North American account. You know, which is not a hideous amount each month. You know, it's just paying for an extra account. I already pay for 2 anyway. You know, it would just pay an extra 1. I would probably feel that I'd have to level up a character to a certain point, because there's no point in me posting on those forums as a level. Can you even post as a level 17? Well, you can, but yeah, do you know? I don't know. So yeah, although I suppose if I paid for an account, I'd have a level boost. I suppose I could just lose the level boost, couldn't I? Yeah, I could do that. That's possible. I may do that. I might do that. Do they even have the promised class changes and everything without the alpha? Would be boring. Well, I mean, when the alpha sort of properly opens up, the first thing you're going to be seeing really is, I mean, right, let's say I got a key. Then the first thing I'd be looking at is not so much the classes, because they haven't really properly worked on that. I'd be posting about what I think should be done with them, but I already know that. It would be things like the trade skills, just the general way, the accessibility of the questing, make sure you don't have to do too much rubbish at the start, what the zones look like, how the NPCs are interacting, you know, that sort of stuff. The class stuff, a bit later. Evening, Morales. If you bought Legion for the account, it would come with 110 boost, in fact. It would come with 110 boost if I got BFA for it as well. Can confirm they don't listen once the beta opens. No, they don't, no, because when that... I mean, really, what's coming out today, or if it's today, is beta, really. That the actual definition, the industry definition is, alpha is when it's in-house testing. As soon as you open it up to end users without technical knowledge, that's when it's beta. So what's coming out is beta, but they're calling it alpha. So I know what you mean. When they start calling it beta, that's the point at which, all right, we've had your feedback. Thanks very much. Now we just want to make sure that this thing can run when it opens. But Whittleton, I mean, you say you were posting stuff about arms wars. I was posting something about, there was a particular paladin ability called Greater Blessing of Might. I was posting about that 8 or 9 months before it went live. And they didn't get rid of it for about another 2 or 3 months into it. So, you know, they don't always listen anyway, even if they read it. Legion is on sale right now. Well, possibly. I may do. Have I seen the topic, should I refund? I noticed it, but I haven't read it. Should I read it? Is it fun? Do you mean refund worthy on MMO Champion? Is that the one? So I had a friend get me really excited about this expansion and the new allied races. I'm sure that hundreds of people have made this very complaint. Why make us spend hours and hours and hours unlocking something I just paid for? No, I didn't see the BlizzCon announcement. No, I didn't do a lot of research ahead of time. I just bought it. I cannot name any other time I've had to grind in game to unlock key expansion content. Oh, you haven't played Battlefront 2 then, have you? So I'm out $50 for the expansion and 15 for resubbing. Refund worthy. Blue response, thanks for your thoughts and feedback here. The appropriate parties are aware of this thread and the conversation within it regarding OP's topic. I'm going to be closing this thread. It's obviously gotten very off track. As a final note, we expect an environment of constructive conversation here on the forums from all posters across all Blizzard's franchises. Blah, 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 blah. I haven't read the rest of the thread, of course. But yeah, I can see their point. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because, I mean, buying an MMO in general, I suppose it's understood you have to level your character before you can access the end game content. But, yeah, to be told, you can imagine like a former player being told, oh, allied races are unlocked now. And they don't read, most people don't read stuff on forums. So they buy it and then find that actually they can't play as an allied race because they've got to get a character to level 110 and then do, as they say, their hours of grind. So yes, I can understand that point of view, really. I can understand that point of view. I would have thought they should be able to get a refund. Because it doesn't make it clear. A friend. Well, it makes. I mean, he's obviously getting a refund means he wouldn't be able to play the game anyway. It's not like he's played it for a month and then decided, oh, this isn't very good. I would no, I would, and that's it's sensible. It's easily feasible. They have removed the need 110 on other realms now. I didn't know there ever was a requirement for 110. I know you needed 110 on the faction for the race you wanted to unlock. Did they also have a requirement that you had to have 110 on the same realm that you rolled it? I didn't know that was a thing, actually. Rather have it that Blizz would make the requirements to play through the Suramar questline or the Argus questline. Requiring Exalted, though. Well, even the questline, like, I know they've suggested they're going to change it a little bit in BFA itself, but the issue is at the moment it seems, for players, who've been playing the game for a while, it's not a big deal because we already had those achievements. It was nothing. All we actually had to do was do that initial scenario. But in Battle for Azeroth, of course, I don't think people are really going to be keen on being told, oh, by the way, you have to go back and do the previous expansion's questing. Okay, Sasha, is that what it says when you purchase it? To unlock allied races quest lines, players must have a level 110 character and have met specific questing and reputation requirements on the faction that each allied race is aligned with. Oh, okay. If it says that when you're buying it, then I don't know, maybe. You think they'll take all rep requirements out for when it's launched? Even if they take out the rep requirements, which they may not. I mean, just doing the quest line in a previous expansion just seems a bit... I mean, they may change that as well, I don't know. Yeah, well, that's it, Mizo. Anyone who hasn't played much may well have to do some rep grinding. I'm trying to think which ones it might be more onerous for. I mean, the alliance ones, you get away with it because it's the same stuff you have to do for both of them. It's basically Argus content for both of them. Whereas for the Horde stuff, it's High Mountain, of course, for one, and Suramar for the other. Did they say only about lowering the rep? Well, did they? Okay. I can't actually remember. I know they said something. I mean, it's the sort of thing where feedback can always change their mind. It depends on how much feedback there is. The problem with something like this is people don't really think ahead with their feedback. They'll wait for it to be a problem, at which point Blizzard, it might go down lower on the priority list to change because they'll be in the middle of the live expansion then. Right, I'm going to close this down though, because I still want to see Twitter. As soon as anyone, hi Nico, Asmongold, Preach, anyone says anything on Twitter about having the key, I need to be checking stuff and wondering where mine is. Yeah, I'm not a Tauren lover. No, not really. But I play Tauren and frankly disappointed with the High Mountain Tauren we ended up with. In what way are you disappointed with it? It's a Tauren with moose antlers. There isn't a lot more to it than that, I wouldn't have thought. But in what way are you disappointed? The saddest, one of the saddest sites, it's not actually the saddest site. The saddest site I saw in vanilla, shall we say, and it became quite prophetic, is I was in Warsong Gulch on my Paladin, of course. And, now at the time, Horde didn't have Paladins, but Light Forge armor would still drop from dungeons. It was the Paladin set. You didn't have to be a Paladin to wear it, by the way. So they weren't, although they were intended for certain classes, these dungeon sets, you didn't have to be that class to wear it. So obviously the only people that could wear that on the Horde side were warriors because they were the only plate wearers. And I saw a Tauren in full Light Forge armor. And I remember saying I was in there with the guild group, this is a sad sight. Thank God, because it looks ridiculous. And I said, thank God Tauren can't be paladins. Lack of appearance options. Oh, cosmetic. Oh, you're disappointed with the cosmetic stuff. Okay. I don't actually know what options they have. I haven't unlocked the Horde ones yet. I'm not sure that I would really want to unlock or do anything with the High Mountain one. I could be tempted with Horde, because the problem is, like, I could be tempted to do a Zandalari troll druid for the next expansion as a, you know, a little out that I don't really do much on, just because of the options for druid. The problem is I'd have to level another Horde character to 120 presumably, and do all the requirements to unlock Zandalari trolls. So I'd have to have 2 Horde characters when I'm be Alliance player. But it might be cool enough for me to at least try that. So Sleepy, you just redid the Legion flying achievement. You're amazed how much easier it is the second time around. Now they lowered the requirements so much, just revered with each faction. Well, it's quicker. It's not easier than Exalted. It's quicker than Exalted, certainly. But, yeah, I think a lot of people are... I mean, I'm still baffled why... I can understand why they put the requirements in for a current expansion. I always think when the next expansion comes out, they should just remove the requirements for the previous one. So there shouldn't be any achievements needed to get it in WoD anymore. That should just be like a legacy achievement, and then just let everyone just buy it from a vendor. Because, you know, they're just being dicks otherwise. Very little customization for the allied race as well. I mean, the allied races themselves are a form of customization. I know they've got their own racials, which, you know, I mean, I wouldn't have done too much. But I'm quite happy with my Void Elf Priest and my Void Elf Warlock. Except my Void Elf Priest was being bullied yesterday when I was trying to level it. So much so that I was getting the impression maybe someone from the stream was actually targeting me, because I couldn't work out how I was being, like, assassinated so much in so many different places. Whittleton, you only got one real character, an Orc Warrior, and you can't wait for the upright stance. Well, that might be a while. Because although they've talked about Orc allied races, they haven't, you know, there's nothing definitely on the horizon. It could be another year or two before anything comes of it. I get that. I would think they'll probably bring more out in Battle for Azeroth. I don't think they'd wait for the following expansion. Do you still need the achievement for WoD flying? Yes, you do. Yeah. What I'm a bit surprised about is the whole balance thing they did with the allied races and their available classes. 2 druids for Hordes and none for Alliance. And where are your DKs? They have this issue. They have a really weird attitude to chronology in World of Warcraft. Like, they'll say something like, you can't have a Pandaren Death Knight because technically there should be no new Death Knights, is their argument, because the Lich King, okay, the new Lich King doesn't do Death Knights, and we now know he does, because the Death Knight Order campaign we made some new Death Knights. So that argument's complete hogwash. But nonetheless, their argument is, well, the Scourge is done, the Lich King was killed after we discovered Pandaren, so there's no Pandaren Death Knights. The same applies to the allied races. They've only just joined us now. Again, any race that come into the game after the Scourge can't be Death Knights. That's what they say. Even though it's not really true in any serious sense. But I'm going to come to that in a minute, Himtim. They haven't data mined Draenor Orcs. What was I saying now? Yeah, so that's their argument. But the problem is their chronology doesn't make sense anyway. Because when you're level 1, you're doing quests that are supposed... Not level 1, actually. That's a bit extreme. When you get to Westfall, let's say, level 10-ish, you're doing quests that supposedly take place after the fall of the Scourge as well. So the chronology is all mixed up anyway. So Himtim, they haven't data mined Draenor Orcs. I know what you're referring to, though. Those are some things that Wowhead put out, and they did say they're not data mined stuff. That's stuff they were using to show off their character model viewer. So that's not data mined. There are no data mined allied races other than Dark Iron Dwarfs and Zandalari Trolls, and even then they haven't managed to data mine all the details of them. Perhaps we play races like Tron because the range of size of the human race is so limited, i.e. no large bulky humans. Well, if they introduce some of the Kulturas human models, then that may change, of course. They seem to have a significantly larger range. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of customization of characters I would like to see. I would like to see like a range of physiques as well as heights and things like that. But it just, you know, and as people have said, it may just be that the WoW engine just can't do that. They have to just create templates and give you a small range of things to customize, which is why sub-races would be a much better idea than these allied races things that we've got. But, you know, there you go. You can't wait for Mythic Plus in early BFA. Well, we'll see. You thought upright orcs would be a cosmetic option for current orcs. They may be. They may well be. But at the moment, until they say something more... when they talk about things like that, so far they've just been talking about, we could do this and we're thinking of doing this. Until they've actually done it and it's on a PTR, it's not done. Worgen and Goblins didn't make sense either. In terms of their logic, no, they didn't make sense. And that's where their logic falls down again, Miss Al, indeed, with Death Knights. Although, well, maybe not. I suppose they could argue that Worgen and Goblins, although they weren't player characters before the Scourge, they were in the game. Worgen and Goblins existed. So maybe they argue it from that point of view. Even though they couldn't be played by players. Whereas things like Pandaren and Void Elves and High Mountain Tauren just weren't anywhere. Well, basically, they hadn't gone anywhere near Lordaeron, should we put it that way. Anyone who went anywhere, because ultimately the Lich King turned people who went anywhere near Lordaeron into Death Knights. You were pretty safe if you were elsewhere on the world. Well, possibly not Northrend. You would like to see more improved... No, I'm not even reading that sentence. You'd love to play a fat human rogue. I don't know. No, you should be more lithe as a rogue, surely. Like, as I was saying in a video, I can't even get... Or was it a stream? I can't even get my head around orc rogues. I don't get orc rogues. Oh, it was the mailbox on Sunday, wasn't it? Yeah, that's it. Where someone was asking why you can't have Tauren rogues. Could you imagine? How is a Tauren supposed to sneak up on you? How about we just do away with race variant? How did you manage to use that word? Hold on. Oh, what the hell have you... Is this some sort of witchcraft? How are you using a word that I've specifically banned? What? Anyway. Dwarfs are fine. I have no issue with dwarfs. You don't think any company could get away with calling something a sub-race? Well, they don't have to call it a sub-race. But, you know, they could have just done them anyway. You know, it could have just been like, for example, you choose to play an orc. So you've got your standard choices for orcs. But then it's like, you first of all choose your body template. So you can choose the orc body template we have now, and then there's the upright orc body template and stuff like that. And then there's the sort of, you know, Draenor versions as well. And you could just have the different versions, and then you go down into the other characterization models. You don't have to call them anything. You know, they could just be extra things in there. The token is a bit below 300k, is it? Well, it's been round about there for a while. But if it's crept back up a bit, I might get another couple. Pandaren existed in the lore, but apart from Chen Stormstout, and he didn't go to Eastern Kingdoms either. He went to Kalimdor. So no Pandaren ever went anywhere near Scourge lands. So that's their argument for no Pandaren Death Knights. They weren't in Northrend and they weren't in Eastern Kingdoms or anywhere near Lordaeron. And most of them were nowhere on any of those continents. They were all in Pandaria. You spent like 2 million gold on BFA pre-purchases for you and your brother. What do you mean? Oh, I see. You've been using your gold for it. The most annoying thing about the allied race is that scroll bar. Scroll bar? What scroll bar? Am I missing something? Oh, it's punctuation getting people past. Oh my god. What's wrong with Twitch? Can they not work out that a particular string of words is just banned? Although sometimes that can go a bit wrong. I remember before World of Warcraft when I used to play a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and Games Workshop, they had they brought out a forum which was very well attended, and then they stopped it for some reason. I don't know what that was about. It was really good, but it had a bit of a profanity filter on it, which would put asterisks in place of what it thought were profane words, and you couldn't put horseman in. You know, you could be talking about marauder horseman, say, or something like that for chaos. And it would put asterisks in the middle of the word, because in the middle of the word horseman is seaman. And it didn't like that. It's like, what the hell? All it did there really was draw attention to it. So, but you would expect these days for filters to be a bit smarter. Also, High Elves were not enough to be called a race, according to Blizzard, but a handful of exiles. Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, isn't it? I mean, the Void Elves are supposed to be, you know, a small band of a small band that were exiled. I don't know. Murlocs could be put out in force, yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, you know, Murlocs, unfortunately, wouldn't make sense as a player race, which is a shame. What if your face class combo determines your spec? Like only undead rogues could be sub. Only troll rogues could be assassin. That would be even worse than what we have now. It's not immersion. The problem with immersion is when you put too... Like, obviously, there needs to be some restrictions in a fantasy game because the way the world is written, there's certain red lines. But, and you need that for the cohesion of the world. But when you put too many restrictions, you have to be careful when you put a restriction in that it's a needed restriction. Because if it's not, then it actually becomes less immersive. Because you're forcing people down a particular route. Like, I mean, coming back, like taking Star Wars The Old Republic. So the idea of that in your questing, you get to choose your responses to certain things. The problem is, when you don't get a response that your character would actually use, then that breaks the immersion. Because it's like, well, I wouldn't say any of those things. So, you know, or even words to that effect. On the character selection screen, we now have a scroll bar. Do you just mean the extra one that says allied races? Your DK would disagree. What would your DK disagree with? Oh, the previous statement. Oh, well, we're not going to have statements like that, Kisasha. Especially on the centenary of women actually getting the vote in the UK. Albeit not all of them. It's 100 years today in the UK when some women got the vote. But then, to be fair, at the time, not even all men got the vote either. If you have filled your character slots, you now need to scroll to see them all. Oh, I see. Right, I've got you. That scroll bar. Well, actually, Well, don't make too many on one account. I mean, at the moment, that's not going to be a big deal for me because I'm making my new ones on my main account, which only has a few characters in the realm I'm on. You're about to ask how many years since men got the vote in the UK. Well, it started out, like, to begin with, not many people had a vote. They didn't, when Parliament, came in, it wasn't really a democracy in any serious sense of the term. Not many got a vote. At the point at which, of 100 years ago, so I can't remember when it came in, but just before the act was passed that gave women, or some women, the vote, you could only vote as a man if you owned property, basically. So in other words, it ensured that only wealthy people could vote. Then they changed it so anyone over the age of 21 could vote if you were a man, or 19 plus if you were in the armed forces. And then 100 years ago, they allowed any woman who had property. It could be her husband's property, because at that time, no woman was allowed to have property if they were married. But if they lived in a house, then they were allowed to vote, but only above the age of 30. And then about another 10, 15 years later, then they just went, actually, do you know what? That's when they had what you might call universal suffrage, and everyone above the age of 21, regardless of wealth, was allowed to vote. But that was like 1930-ish or something, I don't know. So it took a long old time. A little bit behind the times of the BFA. What's going to happen to our artifacts when we go in? It's gone. Strange law-wise to upgrade the Ashbury. Yeah, we're not upgrading it. We're destroying it. In order to solve a particular problem that we have at the moment, we're going to drain them. We're going to use all their power and basically knacker them. Your burning question, how much longer can the creaking WoW engine last? It is potentially a good question. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know enough or indeed anything at all about the technical side of game design to be able to say, but it's obvious even to my eyes that with every new expansion, they do, things that make you go, ooh, ooh. But at the same time, you also notice when you play any other game alongside it, shame. So at some point, it's a bit like, playing Baldur's Gate. I love playing Baldur's Gate still now, but it's pretty obvious it's fairly dated. And there comes a point at which, you can't really hide that fact. Did I see the BFA weapon models? Not really excited. Well, everything looks cartoonish. I'm not very excited about most new models when they come in. Apart from anything else, half of the weapon models are likely to be troll-based, because they're based on Zandalar. And I really dislike the troll style of stuff. Like, I like nice, clean... I mean, obviously, I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the game. There's people that do like that. But I like nice, clean weapons and armour and stuff like that, which I think suits the Paladin style a lot more. Whereas your rough and ready savage type armour is more befitting of like Orc Warriors, things like that. And then, your South American style inspired type stuff is more for... that sort of works with trolls, but it doesn't work with me. While Activision at hell, the WoW engine will keep working until nobody is subscribed anymore. Well, I don't know how easily you could even just replace it anyway, because wouldn't you have to just make a whole new game? So engine gets developed ongoing. WoW is kept low to maximize players. Lots of potatoes can't run flashy new MMOs. That may be true, but at the same time, how many people really genuinely have what you'd call a potato these days? I'm not sure there's that many. Because what might be a fairly cheap computer now would have been presumably pretty good 10 years ago. And I don't understand why WoW, if they are updating the engine, And I accept that they obviously must be doing something because the technical limits are being expanded all the time. Like in Legion, we had the extra distance, 3 times the distance that we can see. You know, there's stuff in Battle for Azeroth that looks, again, better still. A redesign of a lot of models that make them a lot better. But I don't understand why we have fewer customization options than games that came out 10 years ago. Because if you could play those games 10 years ago on a bog standard computer, even though not as well, then surely you could play one on a bog standard computer that's more modern. There's a massive Chinese WoW community that have really low specs. Well, theirs is a different game anyway. They just keep them the same. Their version of WoW is different to ours anyway. So it doesn't stop them upgrading ours. Yes, well, that's it, El Grande. A cheap PC right now is non-existent 10 years ago. So, I mean, that would be my point, really. But, I don't know. What is going on? Hang on, what? Same engine, different models. Well, I'm just trying to work out time again. What are we on? I suppose it's still morning in California. Have I seen the new BFA Offhand, the floating squid? No, I haven't. Floating squid? Where was that? I mean, since last week, of course, we've now seen that Forbes interview guide. I'm still curious to see what that comment from Afrasiabi was about Metzen coming back. I mean, he may have just meant coming back to voice Thrall, because we know that would happen anyway. The game has improved and minimum specs gone up, but they tried to keep that aspect in balance. Obviously, a 10-year-old machine couldn't do well. It wouldn't even do Windows well. No, I wouldn't have thought it would. In fact, well, you'd have to have upgraded some things in a 10-year-old computer, because I'm pretty sure that 10 years ago, your hard drive would have just been a few hundred meg, wouldn't it? That's not going to cut it. You can link it to me. You can't link it in the channel. And then I could put it in the channel. Well, the style is certainly developer choice, yes. It's not the style. Well, I do have a problem with the style, actually. But that's not what I'm talking about. It's literally the actual customization. There's so few options. The style is the style because at the time, they wanted... they didn't think it would be that popular. They were desperate to get as many people playing WoW as possible, and that basically meant drawing on all the people that played Warcraft 3. So they needed it to look like Warcraft 3, which I don't think was needed. You can never prove it, of course, unless you go to an alternate universe where they did that. But that's why they did it. They wanted it all to look exactly like... So the buildings all looked exactly like they did in Warcraft 3. The characters, as in the basic races, look like they did. But for an MMO, it just makes it look... I mean, you get used to it, but, you know, it just gets cartoony. WoW can still be played on integrated graphics if you have to. That can be a big deal. You recall a similar situation bringing you back to WoW, right? Yes. Yeah, well, that is true, certainly. So, yeah, what I did... I stopped playing WoW after second Nax in Wrath of the Lich King, because I thought, oh, a raid that lasts 2 days, great. So I stopped playing it just before Ulduar came out, and I went off and played other things. Okay, yeah, I've just got the whisper. And, you know, I played Lord of the Rings Online, and I played... That's YouTube, okay. And I played some other stuff. What else did I play? Warhammer Online, that's it. I played Warhammer Online again. Because I didn't like that when it first came out. I bought it because obviously Warhammer. Then didn't like it. But then I went back to it and it was much better. Even though still not great. But it was good for the PvP stuff, was fun. But anyway, what happened was my graphics card basically went in a cloud of purple smoke. Or at least a purple flash. So that was gone. At the time, I didn't actually have very much money. So I couldn't afford to get another good graphics card. So I just had to get a bargain basement one off from the local computer store. Which I couldn't run Warhammer Online at all. Could turn everything down, couldn't play it. Just not at all. So that was that scuppered. Lord of the Rings Online, you could play still, but it wasn't as good. So then, yeah, I tried coming back to WoW. And yeah, WoW, I could not only come back and play it, but I could raid and all the rest of it. So yes, there's absolutely, no doubt that WoW, certainly at the time, and I believe it still would be the case now if someone told me, will run on a lower spec machine better than some other games. But I don't see how that affects the character customization. Anyway, let's have, this is YouTube. Hold on, let me have a look then. Let's see if I can copy this. Oh. Hang on a minute, hold on. Let me just put this on here. Because this is a bit weird. Sources, web page. So you're saying this is an offhand? Because do you know what it looks like? It looks like a squid that's just floating around someone. I'm sure it's not a flying squid pet. I've not seen this though. But it does say offhand weapon. Let's just turn that sound off completely because that's just annoying. That's an offhand. Well, it is off the hand. What? I don't even know what that is. Anyway. So low. Okay, let's read this. Oh, you'd like dies, or Gidrain? Oh, yes, so would I. But that, maybe that's a step too far. I don't know, but I would certainly like more customization with the actual character. Yeah, dies would be nice, but I think. See, the thing is, I'm pretty sure they've tackled that question before and given some technical reason why they can't really do it. However, I'd be much more inclined to believe the reason they don't want to do it is less to do with technical reasons, which may be possible, I don't know, and more to do with the fact that they do recolours, as in, well, here's your LFR armour, here's your normal armour, your heroic armour. All right, your mythic armour is a little bit different because it gets more outlandish shoulders, but basically it's all recolours. So I think the fact that they give out different recolours as different content, or at least gear, has something to do with that. They're not going to add floating gnomes. How are people able to type that word? Just because you put a bit of punctuation on the end shouldn't allow it. Well, Lox did get the floating head. The floating head is one thing. It's like a little skull floating around them. That is a giant squid that actually, if we're honest, unless they got the perspective wrong, appear to be larger than the apparent wielder of this offhand. Oh, you've put a 0 in the gnomes, I see. I'm going to have to add some words to my banned list after this stream. Putting spaces in shouldn't work either. It goes for 80% of weapon. Well, yes, there is. It has to be said. A lot of weapons are fairly large. Some of them excessively so. It may appear large because of the angle. I don't know. Would I use a gnome as a weapon? I think it'd be a bit small. Do you know what it brings to mind? What was the game now? There was a Star Wars game years ago now. Years ago. I can't remember what it was called. But that had like a multiplayer version where you could actually battle against other players. And I was playing against a friend of mine. And I was... Who was I? I think I might have been Darth Vader. I can't remember. But he was Boba Fett. And some weird bug happened where instead of swinging my lightsaber around, it may have been Jedi Academy. Instead of swinging my lightsaber around, I was swinging round a Boba Fett model for some reason by the feet. So I was swinging around a Boba Fett at a Boba Fett. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But no, I can't imagine myself using a gnome as a weapon. As amusing as it would be to beat lots of gnomes with a gnome. But I don't think the Blizzard allow me to do that. Speaking of which, I've just seen a meme one thing. Does anyone remember? I say remember, it's not that long ago. Hold on. Where's that thing they produced? Let me find it. No, I'm not going to be able to find it now, am I? How annoying. But Blizzard produced... Bugger, can't find it. Basically a tableau for Battle for Azeroth last week. One with like Horde characters, one with Alliance characters. And you should have seen the Gnome Mafia on Twitter having a bash at Blizzard. Because the Alliance one, it's got like Anduin Rin at the front, and then to his right, you've got Greymane, and you've got various, like, you know, races covered, shall we say. There's no gnomes in it. Wish I could find it. But, should be in this folder. I need to start putting things in the right folder when I save image files. Because at the moment, I'm not doing. See if I can find it. Bugger, it's not that one. Oh, hold on. I might be here. You can see the Horde one. Ah, here it is. There we go. So yeah, someone was noting, so, you know, you've got Elf, Draenei, Human, Worgen, another Human, Dwarf. No gnome. Actually, I reckon there is a gnome there. And, you know, if I pick up my old Ashbringer as my pointer, I reckon... Hold on, what's going on? Ashbringer, top. I reckon the gnome is just sort of behind there. So it's there, you know, it's just covered up by the logo. That's all. So they haven't been missed out. They're just hidden. There's a quest down in Uldum where you can roll and crush loads of gnomes. There's a big flaming boulder. Yeah, someone told me about that. I haven't really... Like, when I came back... Because I came back to the game in Cataclysm. But when I got to Uldum, I didn't really seem to need to get much experience before I could go off to... is it Twilight Highlands or something? Wherever it was, you would naturally go after Uldum. So... Because you only needed 5 levels then. And I basically did all of Val'sharah. Quite a lot of Mount Hyjal. So when I got to Uldum, there wasn't really much experience needed. So I didn't do many of the quests there. So I missed that one out. That's a bit of a shame, really. But anyway, I don't know what's going on with this. When I just say Val'sharah, what do I mean? Vash'ir, sorry. Vash'ir. There's only so many words beginning with V. They all run together. I'm going to check my battle.net. No, damn. Still not been invited to the build to... Oh, whoa. Oh my god, you're trolling me now, Blizzard. They're trolling me. Sorry, I had an email from Blizzard. It's not an alpha key. Absolute trolls. Am I a fan of underwater zones? Not at all. No, I hate underwater zones. There is only one. I hate it. I just did it. That's all. You know, it sent me there. I just did it. But I didn't enjoy the fact that it was underwater. I mean, bearing in mind, I'd only just come back to the game. I hadn't really read around anything. For all I knew, if I went off somewhere else, that would be underwater too. Underwater expansion coming. Well, I don't think for the next one, but they are rather running out of land mass for us to fight on. So we're going to the South Seas next. There isn't really very much else, so they're going to have to come up with something for the following expansion. Underwater raid fight in BF8. No, there was a bit in Burning Crusade in Tempest Keep on the Kel'Thas fight. There was a bit in the final couple of phases where you would do the gravity thing, and then that used the swimming mechanic, so you had to move around as if you were swimming. That wasn't pleasant either. I can't imagine a whole fight when it's like that. That would be awful. It would give people with blinks even more of an advantage, surely. Not that there's going to be many of those, because Blizzard seem to think that only mages should have blink. That's why they're supposedly removing Displacer Beast from Druid. Oh, but by the way, we'll allow a blink type effect to be on the new allied race, so that any race that can be a void, or any class that can be a void elf, can have a sort of blink, albeit a blink that you have to wind up. But in PvE, that's not a big problem. There's a lot of water mounts lately. There's always been a lot of water mounts, though. And the best water mounts, bear in mind, came in Cataclysm and Mop. I mean, Cataclysm, you got the turtle thing, which is faster in water, as well as, I suppose, the Rains of Poseidus, whatever it's called. And then in Mop, you got the Strider. So just because we've got mounts since then that can go in water doesn't mean to say... I mean, those were the best ones. Invade a new planet. I'm not sure about going to new planets again. I mean, they could, but at some point, it stops being World of Warcraft. Especially if they want to do this faction warfare thing, because how is it going to make sense to go to another planet and have a Horde versus Alliance thing going on? Unless there's unless they do what they're doing in BFA, which seems to be, partially at least, a fight over resources, i.e. Azeroth. But it's not Blink because it works differently. When did Blizzard say that? Because I remember what you're talking about with the void of the racial. Yeah, well, it doesn't work quite the same because it's not as reactive. You have to know that in a few seconds' time you're going to need to shift your ass and in which direction. So I can imagine their argument from the point of view for PvP it's not as good. Well, all right, it's not as good for PvE as well, but for PvE you can sort of predict when you're going to need to move forward. I mean, I was using it yesterday for leveling because what I was doing with my Shadow Priest. So, and I haven't played Shadow Priest. I didn't even play it in the alpha. I played Discipline Priest a bit in the alpha, but I didn't play any of the other specs. So I had no idea about Shadow Priest. I haven't played a Shadow Priest since WoD. But anyway, so they've got this ability which is quite good, where you put Shadow Word Pain on a load of targets, and then when you've got full insanity, use this ability. I can't even remember what it's called, don't care. And it does a massive amount of damage. Oh, Gary Smith, thank you very much if you're in here at any rate. It does a massive amount of damage, which basically when you're leveling, Void Eruption is it, thank you, kills everything. It's fantastic. So I'm going around dotting everything up and then using this thing, boom. So what I was doing was going, okay, there's some mobs over there and there's some mobs over there. So I'll set off my spatial rift going that way. I'll dot up the mobs here. Then I press the keybind to teleport myself, dot up the mobs over there, then use that ability before they all get to me. Bang. Fantastic. That's what I was doing yesterday. So, yeah, and in a raid and dungeon, you can do the same sort of thing. If you know something's incoming, that mean you're going to need to shift your arse, well, you can set it off. You know, just set it off a few seconds early. And then hit R, sorted. Be hard to fight a Shari without some water in the fight. No, it doesn't have to be. I mean, Lady Vash didn't have water in that fight. She doesn't have to be in the water when you're fighting her. I mean, it's likely to be, or it might be, I mean, Serpent Shrike Cavern, you could argue, was a water-based raid, but you didn't have to do any fighting in water. Void Elf Arcane Mages and Arena make people flip their... Really? Yeah, I saw the new model, and I know what you mean. It was all the tentacles. It does imply it, but, you know, well, we'll wait and see. I mean, it might not be that long before we find out. You know, remember, there's only... I can't remember where we are now. Like half a year before it comes out. 6 or 7 months. Well, she might flop around. She might be like Ursula in The Little Mermaid. I know she was mostly underwater, but not always. We could beat her by taking the water away and siphoning some power. Maybe. Maybe that's what we do. Smash loads of holes in the floor till the water drains away. 2 blinks, 2 display... Oh, Void Elf Arcane Mages. 2 blinks and 2 displacements plus the spatial rift. What Illidan did to Outlands. Yes, that was the thing with Serpent Shrine Cavern, wasn't it? That was the big story of why did we go to Serpent Shrine Cavern to beat all those bosses? Because they nicked our water. That was essentially it. They were nicking water. That's why we went there. Nicking water on this planet that's already exploded into 1,000 pieces. But no, nicking the water is the last straw. You do get to keep the fish. I haven't even got my fishing rod yet. I haven't done any fishing really at all. I should do it. I suppose. I don't see why I wouldn't get to keep the fishing rod. It's a fishing rod. Yeah, Illidan was draining water from outlets so we could control the population. Yes, presumably the population that hadn't drifted off into space. Wasn't much of it left. But, you know. Is anyone else missing from this race thing, actually? We got everyone. Wasn't he using the naggers? Yeah. Yeah. Illidan had control of the Naga and also Kel'Thas's Blood Elves. Even though Kel'Thas apparently said that in the dungeon version that he was doing his own thing. I'm not really sure that was true. Or at least it's a bit of a departure from his attitude in Warcraft 3 at any rate. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a job that the Naga would mind. Oh, by the way, do you mind nicking a load of water? No, not at all. We like water. We live in it, you know. What's my take on Azeroth physics? Why didn't Argus... I did a video on this. Why didn't Argus cause tidal wave? Why did the moon cross behind Argus is a better question. And why, when you look at Argus in the sky from Azeroth, which, okay, most characters can't do now if you've killed Argus, but if you look at that, and you look at the size of it in the sky, it's a fair size, I'll grant you, it's a fair size. But then you go to Argus and look at Azeroth in the sky, and it fills the whole skyline. So that's, and they're obviously the same distance. I'm not giving you that portal rubbish. So that strongly suspects that Azeroth is way bigger than Argus. And also some of Argus's mass is ejected off into space anyway. Why is it that the gravity feels the same on Argus as it does on Azeroth? Hi Pinky, I'm well, thank you. You. Why can't your dragon fly it until you buy a skill from a trainer? Well, maybe you just fear it will fly away. It's that you can't fly it. Yeah, I actually wonder what's, I wonder if Khadgar's going to have any role at all. If I was the story writers, I might just have Khadgar quietly bow out of BFA for fear of, because he's been too important a character in the last couple of expansions that I think it should just let him take a back seat for a bit. But we shall see. Have I done any of the Love in the Air stuff? No, I went into a dungeon yesterday with my priest, that's about it. I don't really bother with most of the seasonal ones now. Apart from the Christmas ones, but that's mostly because I've got a load of free time. And there's no raiding going on. And even then I don't do that much. But I cannot believe, what have they done? Blizzard sending me... So a week after you could get the pre-purchase, they've sent me an email saying, would you like to get the pre-purchase? When I've already got it on both of my accounts. And it was a week ago. Anyway, Khadgar final raid boss in BFA? No, they're not going to kill him off. Even for the Horde, they're not going to kill him off. Surely the Horde have got nothing against him either. Are we expecting a relevant BFA Q&A soon? From Blizzard? No. I wouldn't say soon. But you'll get, basically, your best chance of getting actual Q&A is if I get a key. Because then we'll be able to look at the... Well, you'll still be able to look at the responses anyway, even if you can't post that. But they will open... Actually, that's a point. Should we check? Because what they'll have to do at some point, when the keys go... When the keys get sent out, they will create a forum for people to post feedback on it. I wonder if they've put it in yet. I need the, it'll be on the North American forum. So I need the US BattleNet forums. Khadgar is not neutral. He is Alliance, but at the same time he's not Blood and Guts Alliance in the same way that Illyria is. You know, he's more interested. He would. You get the impression he would prefer it if the Alliance and the Horde would just get along. But he is Alliance. Let's have a look. I can't see a Battle for Azeroth forum yet. They would presumably, oh excuse me, activate that when they do send those invites out, but they haven't yet. So yeah, at the moment, no, nothing. Nomi, the final Legion boss. Possibly, yes. What, with the best weapon in the game being a frying pan that you hope drops off Nomi? Go around with me double-handed frying pan. There are new theories the King of Diamonds refers to Galax. Yes, I saw that. I don't buy that at all. I do not buy it at all. The boy king being Moira's son is possible. That's more credible. But I don't buy the King of Diamonds. And I'm aware of that thing with the cards, the divination cards. No, I don't get it. I don't buy it. Well, I understand it, but I don't buy it. If that turned out to be true, I wouldn't consider it so much clever as just pointless. Could ask a question that was covered at BlizzCon. Yeah. Well, you've got to bear in mind the Q&A last week, as many people have pointed out, was clearly to hype up the pre-order so they could sell as many of the pre-orders as they could. Which was a bit of bad luck for North American guilds that wanted to raid last Tuesday, because the servers basically went gone. Naomi is Ragnaros in disguise. I bloody well hope not. It's bad enough bosses coming back, but not coming back twice just takes the piss. So hold on, what am I saying? I think they'll have it for the majority. Maybe in the end when we try to contain N'Zoth and Void shows up from Carol. I know what to do, boys. Yeah, I still hope there is an N'Zoth aspect to the expansion. But again, it's one of those things I'm not so sure as I was. There's so many things where Blizzard have just caught me out, I think, in the last year. In terms of, nah, they won't do that. Oh, they've done that. Okay. Like this time last year, I wouldn't even believe that the Legion was going to be finally defeated. I refused to believe it. And yet that's happened. I certainly wouldn't have believed that they're going to basically destroy Undercity and Donassus, which we now know is going to happen. Oh, excuse me. And yeah, I wouldn't have believed that in an expansion where you're going to go to Kul Tiras and Zandalar and basically do a South Seas thing, that you wouldn't have N'Zoth. But you know, I haven't seen anything that sort of says that we definitely will have something related to it. So I don't know. What are we getting next in 2018? Well, in the Forbes interview, Afrasiabi said that there's a load of story to come. So we know we're getting story content. I just don't know what else we're going to get other than new quests to cover the story. I assume they will expand the quest hubs in Silithus to tell this story, because part of the story obviously involves the sword, and apparently to, you know, disable that bloody big sword, I've got to sacrifice my little sword. Are Islands 3-man content? That's what I thought they said, yeah. But there's also some other type of content that's like bigger groups as well, where you're fighting against smart NPCs of the other faction. But the Islands, yeah, I think they were supposed to be 3-man. Do I think herbs will remain lootable by groups of 10? Yeah. I mean, that was, you know, if I were to, and I'm not going to yet because obviously Legion still hasn't finished, even though most of it has. If I were to compile a list of some of the best features of Legion, the fact that you can tap a node after someone else has for a certain amount of time would definitely be one of them. Excuse me, I'm really tired. Because it's always so annoying when you're fighting a mob that's guarding a node, and then while you're fighting it, some arsehole just comes along and taps it and takes it off. And it's like, well, I didn't even want to kill that boar. I was only doing it because it was guarding the node. And then you're stuck with the boar and no, you know, flowers or whatever it was you wanted to pick. So, yeah, I'm glad they've done that, and that certainly needs to stay. What I would quite like them to do, though, is to allow some things to stack up more. I mean, herbs are all right, but there's some potions that still only stack to 20. Like, how is it that prolonged power pots can stack to whatever it is? It's at least 100, isn't it? I can't remember. It might be more, but it's at least 100. And whereas my potions of Old War, my more expensive potions, they can only stack to 20. What's that about? So I would like to think that they'll think a bit more about that and let more things stack to higher values, especially things that you're going to have a lot of. You know you're going to take a load of potions into raids with you. Why would they only stack to 20? Especially with my bags. It's all right giving me 4 extra bag slots. I'll soon fill those up. You wonder if the BFA pre-patch will be heavily faction-oriented. Yeah, I accept it. Do you know what? I'm absolutely convinced it will be. Because it has to... All the story that happens from now will be the faction v faction stuff. It's got to tie in with the novel. Because the novel, remember, starts off where we are now. We've just finished with Arcus. That's where the novel begins. And the novel is very much faction v faction stuff. So I think all of the new content now will be based around that. Not just the pre-patch. I think the content that's got to come before the pre-patch will. If you could have stacks of 10,000 herbs and all, you'd be happy. They may not go that far. They might not do that. But 200 is a good number. I don't see the problem. Given that it's perfectly reasonable for someone to make themselves 200 potions and carry those around, it's perfectly valid, I think, to allow them to stack to 200. I'd also quite like, if I was to make a list of tiny little quality of life improvements that I would like to see. Like, the way I think about it is this. So in TBC, they brought in flying. And at first, what was the flying speed? Like 60, 70%, something like that. And then, of course, you could get your epic flying, which is like 200 and something. 280 maybe. And then you could get if you got like Ashes of Valar or something like that, a really special mount. Or the first one I got was the Black Proto Drake in Wrath. Then you could get 3/10% flying speed. Well, that was a lot of time ago. I think they could stand to up the flying speed limit again. Maybe stick it to 400% fly speed. Especially given that we don't get flying anyway until halfway through the expansion. So I'd like to see them, you know, just bung up the speed of the flying mounts again. Cringe when you see old YouTube videos where ghost iron ore stacked into much small stacks. Well, the thing that I disliked about that expansion, I'm not sure it was the only one that did this, but where you needed 2 ore to make 1 bar, the problem with that is if you had an odd number of ore, you were going to smelt it and make the bars, you'd have like 1 ore left, again taking up a whole bag slot. So I didn't like that either. Yeah, I've got the Black Proto. I got that in Wrath. Well, it was the only tier I did in Wrath. It's the only one I did. Because it was so crap that I just thought, and stopped. What do I think about weapons being Warforged only? That is a massive improvement on the possibility of them Titan forging. For my class particularly, I mean, there are other classes as well that benefit from weapon item level. It would have been horrendous. And I'm glad they've seen sense there. And Warforge is okay because you have a much better chance on Warforge. It's still a low chance, but, you know, it's a better chance. So that's okay. I'm okay with that. But, yeah, if it was going to Warforge... sorry, if it was going to Titan Forge, I can't. It would have caused massive, massive drama. You hope they give smelting back to miners. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we actually make the bars now, don't we, as blacksmiths, not as miners. Yeah, it is a funny one. I don't know though. Gordon Bennett. I got like no. Sorry, I got no sleep at all last night. I did it for like 3 hours. I actually don't know why. Just couldn't sleep. It wasn't waiting, by the way, for alpha because I knew that wasn't going to happen yesterday. The more you look back, the more you like MOP. I loved MOP. I thought it was a great expansion. But you know, just as I say, there's just a lot of people that just didn't seem to appreciate it as much as I did. But I thought it was fantastic. You mean like the drama about legendaries and Legion? I think it might have been worse in some ways than, because the legendaries smoothed themselves out after about 6 months for the people that were playing it a lot. But weapons like relics now never do. Like I have 2 960s and a 970 of moderate traits on it, but the item level 2 960s and 970. Now that puts my weapon at item level 993. There are some people with an item level of over 1,000. There are some people that have a weapon with more than 10 item levels above mine. That makes a massive difference. It's huge. Absolutely huge for my spec. This is the reason why when the Netherlight Crucible came out, some classes were just straight up buffed. And that's because when the Netherlight Crucible came out, you could automatically increase the item level of all of your relics by 5. That was going to change the balance between weapon item level and your overall gear item level. So classes like mine would benefit from that. So the classes that didn't got a buff to compensate. I mean, in some games, you don't have the same restrictions on professions anyway. I mean, I don't mind them because I just have several characters to cover those professions. So I'm sort of okay with it. But it could be argued, do you really need your gathering professions? Why not just let everyone gather whatever? And then you just have production trade skills. And you can still have your secondary trade skills like your cooking and first aid and stuff. But yeah, there is an argument for just doing away with the gathering ones and just allowing everyone to have gathering ones as standard. Which maybe you still have to level up, you know. You can't imagine not having all 12 classes. Well, I mean, I still don't have them all at level 110. But although, you know, it won't... I think by Easter I will do. There's more they could do to make mass crafting more fun or interesting. I mean, for me, let's say as a blacksmith, the same could equally apply to tailor or leather worker, though. So like, I can craft some armour. And what's quite good is it doesn't have set stats on it. So, but it's not. It's also random, those stats. So as a blacksmith, like when I dinged my Death Knight or when I dinged my warrior, I did not go onto my blacksmith to craft them a load of BOE armour. I just went to the auction house. Now that for me is not right. When, you know, when I have a blacksmith that can craft those pieces of armour and I didn't, I went to the auction house instead. And the reason for that is that I cannot craft the stats I want. If I go onto the auction house, I can get the stats I want. And as I say, I was saying this last night, Blizzard would probably sort of say, okay, what you should do is craft your armour on the blacksmith, and then all the pieces that don't have the stats you want, sell them on the auction house, and then use the gold towards the cost of the armour you do want. But it might not sell. I've done that. I actually tried doing that, and it often didn't sell. So a lot of the armour must stay up on the auction house for a long time, like the Demon Steel armour. Because I was putting stuff on, and I was undercutting everyone. Obviously, it'd only be a matter of time before someone re-undercut me. But I just used Auctionator, and I just put them on for, like, you know, whatever it puts them on for. I think it's like a copper less than everyone else or something. And they won't sell. Incredibly stupid how everything could Titan Forge except crafted items. Oh no, could you imagine? No, 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 you can't do that with crafted items. But the purpose of Titan Forging wasn't to give people a random chance at better item level loot. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to convince people to go and do old content. Which I don't think they needed to do. I understood the rationale. They want us doing content all the time so that we don't think about unsubscribing. But I think there was enough content as it is without encouraging us to do extra. But Blizzard obviously don't, because they're keeping Titan Forging in, albeit nerfing it a bit. You've got all at 110 except for Warriors. Oh no, I've got a Warrior at 110. I haven't done that much on it though. Really don't know why they didn't go forward with the stat reroll things from WoD. But even the reroll still didn't guarantee you were going to get what you wanted. Do you know what I would rather? And that's combining different ingredients to make the stats you want. And maybe you have to farm those ingredients. Maybe the ingredients you need to put the stats part of it are BOP, a bit like Bloods of Sargeras, but you have to farm them from particular areas. So it's a bit like if I wanted Versatility Mastery, say, then I'd have to farm Basilisks in High Mountain because they drop the... I need those in the bind on pickup for blacksmiths, you know, and you can get them. So I can't trade them. I can't get them with the auction house. I, as a blacksmith, have to go and farm those things myself, and then I can use those, and that means I can make Mastery Versatility Armor. That sort of thing would be better. I think there's a video in that somewhere. Isn't craft... What's this? Hold on, what am I missing? You like the catch-up mechanics in patches, but think it could be done better. Be doing Argus for about 2 weeks and still find it hard to get into a normal pug due to gear starting at 910 and most groups wanting 930 plus. Yeah, you can get to 930 plus whilst doing solo stuff, though. Will be the argument there. I know it sounds stupid having to be 930 plus to go and do a raid that drops 930 gear, but that's always been the case. It's always been the case that they want people who are well geared. And it serves two purposes, setting high gear requirements. One, it means that the higher item level, obviously someone with a high item level doesn't necessarily know how to play. But given that if they're choosing someone for the group, they have no idea whether they play well or play badly. So you've got a better chance if they've got a higher item level. And then the other thing is, if you've got a higher item level and you get a drop, there's a better chance that you won't want it. And then by them asking, oh, by the way, do you need that? There's a better chance of them being able to get it off you and gear themselves up. So there will always... People will always ask for as high an item level as they can get away with. But your best, really seriously, your best bet is not to pug. A pug should be seen as a last resort. Your first port of call should always be to try and join a guild that does the content you want to do. Like-minded people who want to do the content that you want to do at the pace that you are comfortable doing it. That's always your best chance. Now, if it's not possible to find such a guild, then yes, okay, pugs. But pugs are last resort. Titan Forging for crafted items could work like Boom Proc 4 out of 10. It could. I mean, you know, it could work like that. But, I don't know. I don't know whether I'd be in favour of that or not. It might encourage people to craft more, I'll grant you. But at the same time, it's still... For me, if I'm not encouraged to craft... If I can craft gear that my alt wants, but I am not encouraged to make it, then there's something wrong with the system. Seems people are deathly scared of guilds and commitment. Well, I don't know what it is. Like, Because you get so many people who want to pug raids. I'm using the word want in its loosest sense. Hang on, sorry. I keep checking. Oh, no one's saying anything about a bloody ticket yet. Alpha key. What are they doing? Well, they'll be having lunch soon, I suppose. But... Oh. Why is my antivirus just come up? Antivirus, scary. We have found no threats. Okay. Yeah, so there are people, absolutely, that are scared of guilds, it seems to me. Because so many people will ask, you know, what's the best way to get into a pug or something like that? And it's like, well, I run from pugs. I flee from them. It's like when someone says to me, what's the best way to get into a pug? That's akin to asking me, what's the best way to get run over by a bus? You know, my instant question is, why do you want to get into a pug? I can understand some people having to pug something. That's fine. I understand it. But, you know, always try and find like-minded people. Because the other thing as well, in a pug, it's every man for himself. Or worse still, there might be a group of friends who will try, like someone will say, oh, do you need that? And like several people will say, do you need that? And like roll for it. So like you do in LFR, you can do it in pugs as well. Someone says, I don't need this item. Everyone roll for it. 5 people roll for it, but only one of them want, like, of a group. It might be 10 people roll for it altogether, but like there might be 5 in a group that all agree to roll on stuff. And if they get it, pass it to the person in their friendship group that actually needs it. So you get all sorts of crap like that going on. Whereas in a guild raid, it's in everyone's interest to distribute the loot fairly. I'm not saying that will always happen, because not everyone always acts in their own best interest. But it is in the best interests of everyone to do that. Like in an actual raiding guild, it's not uncommon when items drop. Like you might think in Loot Council, which is the more predominant model these days, that it's simply a case of, okay, you know, someone or some people decide who should get the loot. Very often, when there's a lot of demand for something, the raiders themselves are asked who's going to benefit most. And you'll hear people say, well, you know, it's an upgrade for me, but it might not be as much for them, and blah, blah. And people will pass if something is going to be clearly a better upgrade for someone else in the raid, because it's to everyone's benefit if the raid is strengthened by giving the loot to whoever's going to benefit most from it. Did I hear about the now fixed Blizz DNS bug? No, what's that? You'll have to enlighten me there. Blizz launcher didn't authenticate the DNS of the game downloaded until recently. So a random JavaScript on a site could exploit that to run arbitrary code until last week. No, I didn't know about that. Although it is always funny, isn't it? You often find out about these things after they've fixed it, because that's the time when you can be public about it. You don't want to tell anyone about it until it's fixed. Yeah, you can have casual raiding guilds where they take social, because the beauty of normal and heroic as well when it comes to it is you don't have to make every week. You can, you know, if you can't make it one night, then you can't make it. And that's okay. There'll just be one person down that night. You have a guild, but you're recruiting and want to show others that we're serious. We brought another guild in, couldn't bring me because I have another character. You want to re-roll to the other 2 and the warlock's getting old. How can a warlock get old? Warlocks will always be in demand. If nothing else, for health stones. And summons. Except the warlock in our guild is usually the last person to arrive, so that doesn't really work very well. But it works part way through a raid. But it's a guaranteed raid spot being a rogue. Especially if you're the only one. Well, soulstones potentially. I mean, it's always nice to have another battle res option. And of course, that's one you can... If you know that there's someone who is, 1, very likely to die if anyone's going to die at all. And 2, if they do die, they need to get up instantly. Then, yeah, you can always pre-soulstone them as well. That's always a very useful form of battle res. But see you later, Mahal. Well, I don't know. People, you know, it's obviously when something's boring or not is sort of personal. If you don't enjoy it, you don't enjoy it. You play a different one, of course. But I don't know. I think some people as well just like to change things up every now and then. Whatever they play will get boring after a bit, and then they need to change something. Which Legion hasn't really helped with, of course, because every time you want to change to a different character, that's like, oh, okay, so I've got to get up to 75 artifact level. Got to get a load of legendaries. And I've got to get a load of relics. Soulstones is the worst battle rest of the game, the only one with a cast time. Well, it does have a cast time, sure. But again, it can be pre-cast on someone who's at high risk of dying, and when they do die, they need to get up straight away like a tank. So you have that. If you've got a lot of battle reses in the group, or I'll tell you another situation where pre-casting it's useful. So if on imminently, like for example, we have a demon hunter who go with when the bridge is on fire mode, like the second or the fourth bridge, he does his thing where we bop him and he goes shooting off to the end, breaking all the fire barriers so that we don't have to put up with them. But he will die at the other end. He will die. But with the soul stone on, as soon as he does die, he can just res straight back up again. That means we get a bit more damage on the boss, because we don't have to wait for the rest of us to get to the other end and res him, battle res him. So it's pros and cons. It does have a cast time, but at the same time, it has that pre-casting benefit to it. Plus, of course, warlocks. I mean, I'm not saying anyone likes to have to use time to cast something that's not doing anything for their damage, but warlocks do have dots. So it's not like their damage drops to 0 while they're doing it. It just goes down. Well, I don't know. 2.5 seconds is a fair old time to be losing damage, I think, for anyone. But at the same time, you need to do it. And, you do have that benefit. You do have that added benefit that other battle races don't. So, it is useful for that. I mean, it used to be just used for wipe recovery, really, a soulstone. When the raid's going to wipe, quick put a soulstone on someone. Hi, Diablo. Well, I mean, I was hoping that by this time I would either be in a good mood because I've got the alpha key, or a bad mood because I haven't. But in actual fact, no one has, as far as I can tell. So we still don't know what's going on with that. Will BFA need to be more alt-friendly, or Blizzard just... again? Well, let's have a think. The lack of legendaries will inevitably make it more alt-friendly than it was in Legion. There were things they improved in terms of alt-friendliness throughout the expansion. Now, here's where we need to distinguish between some things that they did just because the expansion was well underway, and some things that they recognised was a mistake in the first place, and they won't make the same mistake again in BFA. So I think it will inevitably be more friendly. Whether it will be regarded as friendly, I don't know. I don't think it will. It depends on what your threshold of friendly is. I mean, Azerite armor is still going to be a thing. You're still going to need to farm your Azerite armor. You're still going to need Azerite as well in a AP, a pseudo AP type resource. So that's going to be in there. Try to think what else might be. You're still going to need to farm reps. to get patterns for stuff. But if there's any, like they had Arcane Court of Stars, sorry, where you needed reps to access them as quest lines as well. At first, you had to do all that on your second character as well. Then they changed it so it's just an account-wide unlock. So I would hope that from the very start, that would just be an account-wide unlock. I think it would be if they did anything like that. I think they will put in more account unlocks than they did to begin with in Legion. And the reason I think that is because they did seem to move more that way as Legion went on. Depends on how hard the Azeroth grind is. Well, Diablo, I think the answer to that comes down to, we know why Blizzard put AP in. We know why they put in Titan Forging. We know why they put in the Legendaries like they did. It was all to make us think that every single day they wanted us doing some content that rewarded us with that resource, because the resource was seen as useful. Now, I would argue that they underestimated the amount of time we would still spend on the game without a lot of that stuff, because there was content to do. Yes, we still need the rewards from it. So maybe they kept AP in it as it is now, and not so much the legendaries and stuff. But I think their opinion will still be of the same one there. They want to incentivize us to do content on a very regular basis. So regular a basis, in fact, that we're not tempted to unsubscribe. As a result, I don't necessarily see it being any better than the AP grind was. But it may be better than AP was at its worst. Because throughout Legion, there's been some times when the AP grind was a complete ball ache, and sometimes where it's not that bad. You think they're just keeping the amount... hang on a minute, for comments. Apparently their current plan is to progressively reduce the cost of Azeroth rather than increase amount rewarded. It's the same thing though, isn't it? It amounts to the same thing. It's a way of rewarding you for going and farming things like mad, but at the same time, it's not fatal if you don't. You're not going to be miles behind if you don't. Any gossip on vanilla yet? I am going to be playing, but not a lot. Even Smith. There isn't any gossip on vanilla yet. I had thought, actually, do you know what? I had thought of, I'm not expecting a response, of contacting them. Because the last I heard, they were assembling their team for it. Now, I think it fairly likely, because that was a while ago, that the team surely must be assembled now. But they haven't said anything yet. But it might be worth chasing that up. With tier set bonuses gone and Legos gone, will classes become boring? No, because the Azeroth armor replaces tier and legendaries. It's like they say that the Azeroth armor replaces both those systems and puts into them what we got from those two systems. And, you know, and it makes sense given how they're going to work. So I don't think, no. If anything, it will potentially add more variety, because we'll have a choice in the Azeroth armor bonuses that we can access. And will the talents offer greater differentiation? I really don't think so. They haven't changed their philosophy on talents. Like, they know that something's not right with talents now, that it's not perfect. But their philosophy hasn't changed, which means the end result won't change. The end result will be that the talents in BFA will not work any better than they did in Legion, because they haven't fundamentally changed their aims with them. Do I know if the Azeroth armor bonuses can be changed on the fly, or is it one and done? I don't know. I suspect it is that I suspect it's like the Netherlight Crucible. Once you've clicked it, that's it done. The difference being that when you've clicked on your relic on the Netherlight Crucible, then you are stuck with it unless you destroy that relic. Whereas with armour, you could take it off and put another piece on, and you've still got that armour in your bag to wear at a different time. So it might be a bit better from that point of view. But I strongly suspect that when you click on one of the bonuses, that's it. But I can't know that for certain. It may also be that Blizzard have not definitely decided for certain. There's a lot of things that they won't decide on for definite before they receive feedback, which again is something that I'll keep saying is a good reason why as soon as anything is revealed, people do need to be providing that feedback, even if they're not themselves in the alpha. Because I would be doing that. If I'm not in, I will still be posting feedback where I can. And as people said at the beginning, that realistically might mean that I do need to get an NA account. Maybe I just need to bite the bullet and get myself another. I'm paying for so many games at the moment anyway. What's one more? Surely one row of talents that makes you choose between single target and AoE is poor and achieves what? Well, it achieves you being able to be good on fights, because you cannot have a class, or at least a particular spec of a class, being great at single target and AoE. So you make them mediocre at both of them, and that means they're just bad for all fights. Or you make them good at one and bad in the other, in which case they're good for some fights and bad for others. Whereas if you've got a talent, it's like, okay, I can pick these talents and I'm great for single target. Okay, so now you're good on single target. It's only down to you as a player on how well you can perform. And then you choose the other set of talents, and then you're good on AoE. So on a fight with a load of ads, then again, your class is good on that. And again, it's just down to you in terms of how you play the game to see how effective you are. Oh my God. What the? I swear people are trolling me deliberately. I just saw Balula tweet, 10 seconds, go, 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 go. I'm thinking, and then he said, someone's saying, T 60 seconds until launch of Falcon Heavy. Piss off. Not interested in that. Can talents actually be equaled out, like having 2 or 3 talents producing the same DPS? No. It's impossible. It's actually impossible. You can't, because they'll work differently, and therefore you'll in one situation one will be better. The best you can hope for is in one situation this one will be better, in another situation the other one will be better, and so on. But what's actually going to happen with attempts to do that is one of them will end up as a dead talent, because inevitably one of them will end up in a situation where it's not useful in any realistic situation. You know, there's several dead talents in my spec, and I would strongly suggest that there isn't a single spec that doesn't have some dead talents. Either because one of the others in the row is just overpowered and you can't take anything else, or just because 2 of them are good in certain situations and the other one is never good. Be cool to have a couple of talent setups where one, when played optimal, will pull ahead of the other. Oh, yeah, so I see what you mean, yeah. Well, I mean, that's another school of thought, the idea that maybe you have in each row a passive talent. So someone's playing, they've just dinged it, they don't really know the class that well, so they go for the passive talents, because I tend to do that before I looked at a class properly. You know, in that way, you know, you can do okay, but then there's more active talents, where if you use them properly, you can do more DPS. But if you don't use them well, you'll actually do less the DPS than if you're using the passive ones. So there is a school of thought for that. But I think what you definitely can't have is where the passive talent is the best talent. Like Retribution Paladin, for example, the first row. So you've got 3. You've got Consecration, which is an AoE ability, but you don't use it. There's been 1 raid fight, I think, where it's been good. So basically, it's never used. There's another one, Execution Sentence, which is a pure single target ability, but it's not even the best one to use in single target situations, and it's more difficult to use. And then your third option is one that just passively, it's a passive talent, passively buffs your single target and AoE finisher. But it's the passive one that's better in every situation. Now that's clearly wrong. You can't have that. You know, an active talent by its nature is more difficult to use, and you should, yes, you should be rewarded for that. It certainly shouldn't be less DPS than a passive talent. We'll say that anyway. I think everyone could probably agree with that one. You think all classes should have talent 7 to LE Shamer, where you have various viable builds to change playstyle, not just AoE or single. I don't know how elemental shamans work. Do they ever do anything other than chain lightning? Subtlety, certainly, I think out of all the... Well, there's a few specs that have some complexity to them. I think subtlety is one. Probably need different pieces of gear for that stats and Azeroth armor. Well, that's another thing as well. Sometimes with particular talents, where two talents are genuinely like different, but also you can use one in some situations, some in another. Sometimes they favour different stat balances. You know, that could be a thing. So sometimes it depends on your personal gear as well. You never played a rogue, you took the easy route to high deeps and roll deflection. Okay. As it stands now with talents, Blizz are still making cookie cutter builds then. Well, yeah, what was it? Hold on. Someone made something at the weekend. Let's see if I can find it. Let us... I think I know where I saved this one. Apparently, it was something related to what Asmongold said in his stream. But can I find it? There it is. So this is what Asmongold said apparently. So he was reading what Blizzard was saying. We look forward to seeing the combinations that you put together. And then apparently Asmongold said, I look forward to reading the best one in Simulation Craft as well. Because this ultimately is where the issue is. Because Blizzard say they want talents to be a choice, but they're not. There's always going to be a best one in a particular situation. And the problem is when your aim doesn't match your results, you are going to end up with talents that just are never useful because you're not realistic about your aims. They did say balance doesn't matter. Yes, they have said that. They've said that on more than one occasion in Legion, which is like a stake through my heart. Every time I hear them say, yeah, balance doesn't matter, it's like, okay. I can understand if you say that balance is difficult to achieve, but to actually say that you're not even working towards it is crushing. It's absolutely crushing. Any competitive activity must always attempt to present a level playing field. Should always be fair. That's just the cornerstone of sport. And although when you're talking about PvE like raiding, it's not direct competition because within your team you're not working against another player, you're working against a scripted boss. But you are competing with other guilds in terms of how quickly you can kill those bosses. And also you're competing for spots on the team as well, of course, the roster. So yeah, you should have a level playing field. And they, you know, for them to say repeatedly that, no, it's not a big deal, no one cares, is a bit like... And it may be true that for most people it doesn't matter because the balance is close enough that for the vast majority of even raiders, player skill will more than compensate. You feel like you had more choice when you could main ret and branch into holy and prot. What you mean with the old talent system? Did something happen after MOP? did the WoW design team change? Oh, yeah. The design team changes all the time. Yes, it did. I don't remember exactly when it was. Like, you've got to remember the idea of bring the player, not the class, was Ghostcrawler, who is no longer there. He works on League of Legends now. I do think the raid content has always been strong, though. Like, when I say I enjoyed MOP as an expansion, that means I enjoyed all aspects of it, or most aspects of it. But the raiding was good in MOP, but I also thought the raiding was good in WoD. You know, WoD wasn't a good expansion, but for me personally, the experience was fine, because all I require of an expansion is that the leveling content is interesting, and that the raiding content is interesting. With those two things, obviously, I'd also like to be able to play the spec of my choice in that raiding and be competitive. But if they manage that, then I'm happy. So, although I will say that Legion is a much better expansion than WoD, for me personally, it wasn't. For me personally, WoD was great. But obviously, it wasn't for everyone. For you, 10-man was the best raiding. No, it's 2. It's not really a raid when it's really small. That's the problem. Raid, like, the difference between raiding and dungeons is supposed to be the epic scale. So that's why I'm glad they've got Mythic Plus Dungeons. So if you want your small group content, then Mythic Plus Dungeons are where that surely is got to be at. But yeah, raiding. I mean, even 20 is too small for me. 20 isn't as epic as 25 was. I understand why you can't go back to 40, even though that was even more epic. You know, but have I covered the lock nerfs? Well, I said they've been nerfed, so technically yes. There isn't a lot to say. You know, I don't think affliction locks can complain. It's a targeted nerf. It's not just a flat nerf to all their damage. It's targeted. There's been 3 specs who've been tuned today with the reset. So it'll be tomorrow for Europe. Beastmasters have been buffed a little bit. Fire Mages have been buffed a little bit. Affliction Warlocks have been nerfed a little bit. The specifics of it. If I can... Hello, what's going on? Never mind. Can't find it now. Corruption and agony damage reduced by 6%. So that's dot damage. And Long Dark Night of the Soul now increases healing you receive from Drained Soul by 3% per rank, whereas it was 10% per rank. So, you know, dot damage reduced a little bit, so presumably with things like Coven in mind. And your self-healing reduced by a bit as well. Are you getting the extra character slots? You don't get extra character slots as such on your account, but the extra character slots on your realm should now be in. And that's what Blizzard have said. That should now be active. So you should have access now to being able to have 16 characters on one realm, on one account. But it doesn't mean to say you get more character slots for your account. That's still capped at 50. Hold on, have I missed a comment? What is still a massive problem in your opinion is that some classes require far more focus and complex rotations to perform like other classes. But if you just try and there's no way you can be on par and DPS with the rest, why even bother? It is true. I don't think there's a massive number of specs. There's not many that I can think of that actually have significantly more complicated, but there are some. I would say Subtlety Rogue is one. I would say Survival Hunter is another. There might be another couple on certain types of fight, but by and large, most of the rest, not so much. Wonder if you'll still be able to solo the ads on Kingaroth without dying. Solo the ads on Kingaroth? Why would you do that? The fixed chains on Argus. Well, they've nerfed Argus, haven't they? But I don't have to worry about Argus yet. I'm still on... well, Guild's still on Agrimar. You restored your deleted level 90 Horde Paladin and the name wasn't available anymore. I know, sad times. You stick both affliction locks on the tank ads. Oh, I see, okay. Well, I don't know. You just have to try that out, I guess. But, I mean, the tanks presumably have a healer, so, you know, it shouldn't be too bad to have a healer in range of you. Shadow Priest kind of where a mistake could cause you to drop your void stacks and significantly lose DPS. Yeah, that depends on the fight though, doesn't it? That one is fight specific. Like if it's a single target fight, that's not going to be an issue. If you're monitoring things. During the intermission, yeah, okay, to get some sort of damage on it prior to the phase. Do I have a kinky transmog on my paladin? No. Why would I don't have slot mogs on my... It's a male human apart from anything else. Why would I do a slot mog on my paladin? I have changed the transmog relatively recently though. Where is it? Can I find it? Looks like that now. But it will change soon enough. I'm only doing it for a little bit. It's just in judgment armor. No, right, judgment. But I will be going back to one of my gold transmogs soon. I haven't decided. I might go back to my Lightbringer, but I've had that one. Well, I know there is that side of it. That is the unfortunate part of Judgment. It doesn't look very holy. But I'm likely to go back. I might go back to my PvP transmog. Again, the vanilla transmog stuff. Next time. And leave the Lightbringer alone for a little bit. Still wear me captain's hat, of course. Because that works with those. I would almost use the Stormwind tabard as well, but unfortunately I use my tabard of the Protector for everything. But that one works there. But we've sort of come to the end again on this one. I'll obviously leave it open for another couple of minutes in case people want to get any last minute comments out. And then I'm going to sit here twiddling my thumbs waiting for it to get some news about when an alpha invite is going out. I suppose they'll be at lunch now. Ish. Is it lunchtime yet? No, maybe not quite yet. Is it? 9 o'clock. Yeah, it will be, won't it? It'll be lunch in California. The captain's hat, because I'm a captain. When I was in vanilla, I specifically PvP'd for one reason and one reason only. To get the title of Knight Captain. Because that is a nice title. Once I'd got that, I wasn't interested in doing any further. Because it was over a summer as well. I could have just spent summer getting up to... I probably wouldn't have got to Grand Marshal, but I could have got to at least Marshal. Because I could have just no-lived PvP. But no, I stopped because... You couldn't just choose whatever rank title you wanted. You had to have the title that was your rank. And I wanted to be Knight Captain. So I got to Knight Captain and then stopped. And now I still have access to that title, although I don't use it. So I wear the captain's hat. Because in vanilla, as I say, I wanted to be a captain. But no higher. But there you go. So anyway, I'll call that a day. Thanks very much for coming. Unfortunately, no news either way. No news either way about the alpha invite. So I'll have to keep you updated on that one. Hopefully they are still going to go out today. It's not guaranteed until they've gone out. Obviously they might have some last minute problem with it or something like that. I don't know. But hopefully I'll be able to update you on that at least by the weekend. Ironically, if I did get it and it came out today, I wouldn't actually be able to do anything on it until Thursday at least. Because as I say, I'm working tomorrow evening. So there's no stream tomorrow evening. There will be a stream on Friday, though, just to compensate, because there's a couple of streams that can't go ahead this week. I can't do Wednesday, that's tomorrow, because late work, and I mean late. Saturday, I've got something else on in the afternoon, but I may put a stream on in the evening. But I'll need to just check where I am with that. So that I'll likely say on Friday or something. So yeah, but other than that, I will be streaming every day next week because I'm off next week, although most of them will just be the usual times. But anyway, thanks for coming on everyone, and until next time, I'll see you later.